Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Knocked Conscious. Today, I had the pleasure of speaking with Thomas Sheedy. He's the president and founder of Atheists for Liberty. It was an amazing conversation. Here it is. I hope you enjoy it. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Knocked Conscious. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Thomas Sheedy. I met him at Freedom Fest about a month ago. He is the president and founder of Atheists for Liberty. Thomas, welcome to Knocked Conscious. How are you?
Mark, thanks for having me on, man. Good to be on here.
Thank you for so much for joining. I met you at Freedom Fest, and I have my first question for you. It's real simple. It's like, why do you hate God, man? Why are you going to hell? Just let's start there.
Yeah. Well, I hate God. I like eating babies. I have no moral framework for anything, no ethics whatsoever. And I just get
Perfect.
enjoyment out of attacking people's beliefs without reason.
I love it. I think that's the best way to do it, is just completely irrational, just attack, right? Without having to worry about your own stances, right? Well, certainly
Yeah.
it's very refreshing to see this. I met Justin at your booth. Really great people. Absolutely stand-up individuals. These are people you would meet in the street, seem to have very stand-up people who shake your hand, look you in the eye, have a conversation with you. And then you find out, oh my gosh, they don't believe in this thing that a lot of people believe in.
Yeah.
So you obviously came from somewhere. So I'd love to hear your story, where you started and how you got to where you are. Because I think what's really important is what I like to have on my show is how we show our work, because I think if we show our work, we can always go back to where we split to see where those challenges may have come. Maybe there are places we can patch them up, or maybe we steered wrong, right? So I'd love to hear how you kind of came to this epiphany.
Yeah, I won't go into every tiny detail, but I'll give a very basic overview. And I explain this sometimes in greater detail on certain podcasts, sometimes in shorter detail. So I'll test out the short version to see if it's palatable, and we'll see what people think. So was Catholic until I was 15 years old. A few years between 12 to 15, I was already very, very skeptical of the Catholic Church's activities. This was in the early 2010s when gay marriage was being debated a lot in the United States. And while my mother was very, very fervently Catholic, in fact, she was part of the moral majority, the Christian moral majority growing up, um, or as she became an early adult before I was born, I was always raised in my area, suburban Long Island, New York, with a sense of separation between church and state already being drilled into my head. There's the public school that I go to, where I learn about things, and then there's the church that I go to, that's my own private religious faith, that I was already kind of skeptical of, anyways, kind of
So you
milquetoast.
went to public school. You
Um,
did not go to actually a Catholic private school, because
I
I'm
did
from the East
not
Coast
go to
as
a Catholic
well.
private school.
Okay. So I'm from the Philadelphia area, and that's a prevalent thing, is that a lot of people would take their children to a private Catholic school. So you
Yes.
actually stayed in the public system as well. Okay.
I stayed in the public system. Not all my family members did. A good chunk of my family went to Catholic school, but among those in my household, we went to public school. And so I was already very conscious of church-state separation. I was already conscious of secular life, growing up in the 2000s and the 2010s. And so when I saw the Catholic Church, a kind of feudal medieval institution, caring so much from a U.S. secular public policy perspective, what two adults could do in a secular setting, not in the church, but outside of the church, it made me kind of ponder and question Roman Catholicism, and it made me also compare Catholicism to other belief systems. It made me actually grow a little bit of respect for those who were fervently Catholic, even though my respect for the belief system itself was decreasing. So I became very fiery in my skepticism, but I retained my humanism and sense of coexistence with other people in America. And so the thing that
Now,
finally
now,
made
would
it,
you would you attribute some of that, because I have a Lutheran background? Would you attribute some of your foundation? Obviously, there's some of it based in the religion, but I would think it's more based in the family structure than is based in the religion.
yeah, I think it's more the family structure. I think it's more of the environment that I grew up in and what religion loves to do. And I'm not singling out any one faith, whether it be
Once again, we're
Christianity,
we're just having a
Islam.
deep dive into this. Yeah, for sure.
I would argue that religions, whatever religion you're born in, they take credit for the individual geographic way that you communicate with others and say, you were able to be nice to people because you were raised Catholic, because you were raised Jewish, because you were raised as a Muslim, because you were raised Mormon, Hindu, etc., etc. Um, so I would argue that it's just due to how I was raised. It's very
Yeah.
interesting with me. Well, I would say there are bits of my family that are very, very pious and very, very religious. It's funny how the largest bits of religiosity always come out, and praying for you kind of conversations go out whenever those once a year calls to family members happen. All of a sudden, then, the Christianity is really, really showing. But, during every other day of the year, it's just normal secularism, day to day, American standard, house talk. That's
Right.
happened. Not to say, again, not to diminish the fervent religiosity of others in my family, but
Not at
it kind
all.
of made me realize how growing up in a secular way, a lot of Christians grow up in a secular way. They just don't attribute it. They don't call it secularism. They claim that it's Christian, or they claim that it's Jewish, or they claim that it's Muslim, when it's not the case. So I was already becoming a fervent skeptic towards Roman Catholicism in the early 2010s. And then what really put the nail in the coffin, this was in 2013, the spring of 2013. I was 15 years old. I was studying for my Regents exams. And I remember Bill Maher, he's a comedian. He made a bit about
Religiosity? Are
how,
you watching or something? Isn't in
well, I love Religulous, but I was watching one of his
a
like early
Religulous? That's what it was. Yeah.
2005. He did like a
Right.
2005 comedy special. He always has like a different comedy special each year that usually
Right.
is released either on YouTube, or I guess back then DVD or whatever. And this was the big one in 2005, and this was like a viral video that went around. And in this special, he talked about how uh, I guess a lot of poisons were used in modern medicines back then, like mercury and other things that we didn't know of. And later on in his life, he got it drilled out of him for his own body. And he said you can do the same thing with Catholicism. And I remember the exact moment that I became an atheist. It was watching that Bill Maher remark, already added on with those years of skepticism, but seeing that like was just an absolute game changer, and that's how I became an atheist. Now, then there were two other journeys that I went on: the journey into atheist activism, and then the journey of going to where I am today as president of Atheist Liberty. I'll try to make it as quick as possible.
Right. Well, so
I
if
yeah,
I may, just very quickly. So we had this kind of interesting journey where we kind of go through. I had that same kind of thing where I swung the pendulum through to the atheist side, and now I'm actually what I'll explain it later, but I'm an anti-theist, and I think you even understand what that is. I think probably from a
oh, I
Hitchensian
understand it.
perspective.
I technically fit the definition.
Okay, because we kind of it's funny because that atheist thing becomes almost like a hatred seething, right? Like when I watch
Right.
Sam Harris on Bill Maher, for example, and I watch it sounds logical and reasonable the way he speaks so calmly about destroying other people that he doesn't agree with just because they have a very different philosophy than you, right? It's like, but you
Owning,
must
exactly.
understand they all want to kill us. So if they want to all kill us, the only thing we can really do logically is to kill all of them. Doesn't that make sense? As they dangle that pendulum and try to hypnotize you into this logic trap. So I came to that thing. I swung through really atheist and got like atheist to that point where I hated it, right? Like, did you go through that kind of similar swing at
I
that point? Because
did.
it was like a Bill Maher kind of
Yeah,
epiphany
Bill
kind of for me as
Marion,
well.
Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens. I went through it, and the difference is I never really left it. Maybe I learned to be more diplomatic in the settings I'm in, but the
Yeah, you managed
conclusions,
it.
I managed it. But I'm now actually encouraging people to kind of revisit their teenage past and to actually bring it back out. I think we've been a little too nice over the past few years, because we're like, oh, new atheism. That was like a kid thing when I was on the internet 10 years ago. No, no, no. We need more of that again now. Like we were
Yeah,
a little too nice.
yeah,
We need
yeah.
a
It's
little
true.
bit more of that fervent behavior, because we have liberties at stake that we need to fight for. A lot of people are trying to corrode our liberties in the name of their faith, and we all thought that, oh, new atheism is just a childish thing. Let's make it an adult thing, please.
Right. Well, that I mean,
That's
the
kind of
new
my take
atheism
on it.
really sprang out of the Mother Teresa Catholic, the right, the religious right doing the right thing, the Bible Belt rising,
Yeah.
the rise of profanity and adult lyrics and things in the 80s, and the satanic
Mhm.
music leading to all the death cults and all the murders. I remember all that stuff because that's what I grew up in. I'm a little
Right.
older than you by 20 some years. We won't go almost 25 years. So I grew up in the 80s, and that was a big thing. We talk about Tipper Gore, but remember, it was James Baker's wife who was really pushing that too. It was Billy Graham pushing that. The same guy who put in under God in the pledge in 54. It's like
Right.
these are movements too. It's like they take it's it's like the religion, whatever ideology it is the tool, and it's what we use as
Right.
psychopaths and sociopaths to wield in our way to get what we want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where that I hate to come to that because I see such good people joining a church and joining an organization. So you come to
Sure.
atheism. So you come to atheism. Please continue from there. I know we got a
Yeah.
lot of tangents, but that's the
No,
beauty about the conversation. So
this is my problem. I get into too many tangents half the time. So I
me
appreciate
too.
someone like moderating me and helping me stay on track because I'm the same way. I can go on
Oh, I'll
forever.
get you off track. Don't worry. I mean, I should have
Yeah.
called it tangents. Really, it should have been the name of the podcast. But
So yeah, I became an atheist in 2013, and then immediately I found cause to be involved and to devote all this energy as a young professional in this new atheist movement, the amalgamation of organizations, YouTube channels, podcasts, an online and offline community, spreading throughout the world and spreading especially throughout the West, that was saying, you could be good without God. Religion is a problem when it comes to the advancement of Enlightenment values. Um, uh, Religion is more does more harm than good. You can be respectful to religious people while at the same time condemning bad beliefs. This was the shtick for me to really get into and to sink my teeth into. I like organizing things. I like putting my energy into something, especially a fight that I think I can win. And New Atheism was just ready for me once I got out. So when I was a high school student, I nearly sued my school district, nearly, into getting a Secular Student Alliance atheist club kind of started there. Then when I graduated
nice.
from high school, I once I was 18 years old, just 18, a lot of the baby boomers and Gen Xers of the Long Island atheists, they made me president going into my first 2 years of community college. Then we get into an
Wow.
interesting time frame. So I was already like this kind of like young atheist leader. I don't want to
And
like
like a
put
young
a royal
influence,
hat on
sure,
myself.
you're young, you're hitting this market where you're growing up with the
Yeah,
technology. For example, like I'm a Gen Xer, so getting into the technology is much different than growing with the technology the
growing
way
up
you
with it.
probably grew. So it was a natural
Yeah,
leap
it
that
was
went
so
along with the
easy for
social
me
media
to.
and all the other stuff.
Yeah, precisely. It was so easy for me to organize things. It was so easy for me to use a meetup.com and Facebook groups to organize, groups of local Long Island atheist, agnostic, secular types into rooms of Panera Bread and people's houses to play Cards Against Humanity and libraries to watch skeptic lectures and activism and church state stuff and cleanups and you name it. I did all that at 18 and I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. And at that same time, I was getting involved in a lot of the existing atheist organizations that existed in the United States. So the Secular Coalition for America and their member groups like Center for Inquiry, American Atheists, the Secular Student Alliance. I got a scholarship from the Freedom from Religion Foundation,
So
Foundation Beyond Belief.
would you like write articles for these groups, or would you how would you associate yourself with them? Just do like
I helped them
side
with some
work
of
or
their, yeah, some side work, their youth content. For American Atheists, for instance, I was an assistant state director for New York. So I played a bunch. I was on the Youth Advisory Council for Americans United for Separation of Church and State. So I had all these different hats on and roles to fill, and everybody knew me as Thomas, this giddy, exciting 17, 18, 19-year-old atheist, high school slash college student. And but while I was getting into this movement, especially post late 2016, I saw that the national atheist movement took a dive for the worst. They started to embrace religions and cults of their own. They started to kick members out of their own organizations who didn't subscribe to what they considered to be social justice. They preferred to advertise atheism and normalize atheism in one sect of American politics as these quote unquote neutral 501c3, 501c4 think tank organizations, but they refused to do the same for libertarians, for conservatives, for centrists, for just even liberals that didn't adhere, that would have been acceptable in atheist circles 5 years prior, but not around 16, 17, 18, 19.
you think
Once
that
this
got
kind of
hijacked?
it got hijacked. It got hijacked very quickly
I mean, it
because
seems like what
it
I'm
did.
finding with the government. I mean, this is the thing. Part of this, I've spoken with so many people from Freedom Fest from all different
Mhm.
industries that we've met. It's amazing, but the pattern we see is that the government finds a way to pry into what they would consider an extreme organization, an outlier, and then hijack it, corrupt it more to give it zero legs, so it can't get traction. We see that with even with the LGBTQ movement, where it grows to the point where you just keep adding letters to it. It's like you're
Yeah.
watering down your cause in a weird
Well,
way. It's not that each
yeah,
cause isn't important, but it's like that's what's happening, right? So would
it's
you
happened
say
to
that
us.
somebody may have infiltrated at that point in some way?
Yeah, yeah, a series of bloggers and other activists who came in. They said our conferences were racist or sexist or homophobic or transphobic or whatever they want to say. They did the same for YouTubers. They did the same for content creators, those who got scholarships. They said this about ex-Muslims. They said this about a variety of different individuals and people within our global, you could say nationwide, as well from a US perspective, movement. And atheism is one of plenty of industries and causes and movements that got hijacked by what we know today as wokeism or social justice, this kind of extreme intersectional belief system. And so I was still very young. I was just 17, 18, 19-year-old, just getting started, just leading a local group, just getting out of high school. But I saw this social justice, religious type stuff, culty behavior, curtail a movement that I was ready to give them all my resume to be involved in. And I saw plenty of my heroes go down in flames due to false accusations of stuff or getting kicked out for not being intersectional enough. I saw promises and programs that some of these organizations promised to fulfill not fulfilled because, again, they prioritize social justice over atheism. And for a few years, there was this absolute confusion. I ended up going from community college after I led Long Island Atheists for 2 years to university when I had this WTF kind of moment. What the heck is going on? And I ended up realizing that the national conversation, the national counterculture of new atheism that was growing in conjunction with non religiosity growing in the West, that counterculture needed to be continued. Not only did it need to be continued, though, Mark, but it needed to be refined in a way that that this new movement or whatever didn't get curtailed to death like the old one. We should
Well,
be
it also has to
actually
be it has to be
bipartisan.
palpable. It has to be palpable, digestible, but then
Yep,
it actually has to stand completely on its own. It
it
has to be a
does.
complete separate movement. And it's
Yep,
almost like calling it atheism, for what it is that's what it is. But like
yeah,
it's almost just the liberty movement. Like
right.
I'm like we're talking about LFG, right? That's a whole thing. Is like I'm thinking like, what is LFG? It's like liberty, freedom, and goodness. It doesn't have
Yeah,
why it's goodness. Good is what God came from. I mean, when we just look at the
right.
etymology, it just makes no sense. So
Yeah,
so that's your task, is to find something that is separate from these hijacked people, but stands on its own. And that's kind of where you're at now.
right. Doing all the good things that the new atheist movement did do while refining it and not making the mistakes that they made in the past. We're actually going to be bipartisan. We're actually going to care about individual rights. We're actually going to care about secularism and not care what your party registration is. We're not going to, move you out of our organization just because you don't ideologically agree with another member. We're going to do what the new atheists and the movement of all these think tanks that originally existed promised the American people that they would do, but we're actually going to mean it. And so a few years ago, around 5 years ago, actually, myself and others from the movement founded Atheists for Liberty. And so we have existed since then and continue to grow to this day. So that is kind of the Thomas Sheedy journey into atheism, atheist activism, and then just seeing all the craziness of the culture war and figuring out where I fit in all of this.
Yeah. So you mentioned obviously the things we want to keep, the humanity portions, all the beautiful
Yeah,
things, right? What are a couple of those hiccups that you did find besides the social justice pieces? So obviously,
yeah,
the only thing you want to unite on is we don't want religion to interfere
right.
with governance, I guess
With
is
governance. And any Republican, any Democrat, any Libertarian who cares about liberty and cares about the Constitution should be on board with that, even if you're not an atheist, by the way. And so this was a standard message that you think an organization like Americans United for Separation of Church and State or American Atheists or the American Humanist Association would want to have all Americans digest. Because if you don't have a religious left or an apologetic religious left or a religious right, right? Like, like clawing onto the coattails of one side in American politics, that's fantastic. That's completing the mission, right? Well,
right.
wrong, because you ended up having some of these people prefer their own religion, their own political ideology, their own dogma over completing that atheist mission. And that's the problem. So one of the mistakes is that, funny that we met at Freedom Fest. you didn't see a lot of atheist activism happen on the political right. So I'll make something very clear before I go into some more detail. Atheists for Liberty is not a right wing organization, actually. We're also not a left wing organization. We are an atheist organization. So we have members that are Democrats who are members of the Democratic Party. We have members that are LP people. We have members that are in the GOP. We have centrists and independents who don't even want to have a registration at all. And we have a set of values and pillars, though, and a mission that everybody can be on board with. Because if you're not in support of the mission, then just don't join, don't be a part of our organization. It's simple. That's
Right.
the simple fact of this. So when the atheist movement was alive, the new atheist movement in the 2000s and 2010s, it was fairly
Yeah. And this would
nonpartisan.
be, let's once again, let's just bring it back to
Sure.
that. This would be the four horsemen of the
The
apocalypse. Right?
Four
So this would be the
Horsemen,
Daniel Dennett,
Daniel
the
Dennett,
the
all that.
Sam Harris, the Richard Dawkins,
Yeah.
the Chris Hitchens, and all that. Okay.
And all the orgs that followed it and promoted them: American Atheist,
Right.
American
With
Humanist
when he would have debates
Association,
with like William Lane David
William
Craig or
Lane
William,
Craig.
yeah,
Right.
William Lane Craig. Okay.
All that entire counterculture. Bill Nye versus Bill Nye versus Ken Ham, Ben Affleck v. Sam Harris. All that, this whole counterculture, this whole thing we saw online and offline. It was fairly, especially in the prime years, it was fairly nonpartisan, but it always skewed left. And I don't really
It did
care if
skew left. Yeah,
it
it did
skewed
skew
left.
left because it had intellectuals involved. And generally,
Yeah,
intellectuals, people that come from
they tend to
colleges,
be
live in
left.
vacuums, tend to be left. I mean, we're at Freedom
Yeah,
Fest. We had Michael Schellenberger. We had Brett Weinstein. We had Robert Kennedy
right.
Jr. speak. I mean, come on. We had Jill Stein debate, and we had,
Exactly.
it's, to your point. So,
And the problem was is even in its prime, when the movement was healthy and at its peak and good, you still didn't see a lot of activism where you would see atheist organizations go to CPAC, Freedom Fest, LibertyCon, you name it, Gallows Gulch, all these different things, and reach out to other groups. So, one of my mentors, the former president of American Atheists, he did force American Atheists to go to CPAC, but it was based on his own executive decision as president, with barely anybody else really backing him up in it. So on the most part, you didn't see that, but Netroots Nation, which is the progressive equivalent to Freedom Fest and CPAC, you saw the American Humanist Association and the Secular Student Alliance and American Atheists go there all the time. So that was a problem that was just easily seen even in the movement's healthy years. And if you have this mission, right, to want to normalize atheism throughout all of American politics, Mark, you would think that enough resources would also be diverted every year, even in the years that followed the social justice takeover, right? If you really care about normalizing atheism, do it everywhere. And obviously, you're going to get more acceptance from the left in 2016, 17, 18, 19 than the right. Boo hoo, who cares? That just means you got to put more work into doing the same. And who cares if you get accepted on the left and then you got to put another 10 years of effort to get accepted on the right? That's what happens with social movements every single year, anyways, in American history. So why not put in that effort? Because once again, these other atheist groups, not to toot the same horn that people have seen me toot for the last few years while going on shows, they prioritize that. So that's just one example
right.
of issues that that movement had when I was in it. And for many years I was cowardly and I didn't admit it because I was a young kid getting involved. I was still kind of
Right.
figuring
Well, you
out
had to.
things
I
and learning
mean,
from
look,
mentors.
once you start going down a rabbit hole, you're locked in at a young person. You don't
Hmm.
have your focus. You don't get the cognitive
Right.
dissonance until later after you've kind of settled in, and then you start having time to contemplate other ideas. If you're sounded like you just put your head to the grindstone, and just worked, and so you
Yeah.
didn't really have time to really think about it. You're just pushing that window. So
Yeah,
it's
it's
very
been my
interesting you talk
obsession
about that because
personally.
like even groups like the ACLU, I mean, they protected Nazis marching on a street, and they have now
Yep.
been corrupted to no
Right.
longer. I mean, for hate speech now we're talking for
Now it's
words
been
on a
politicized,
screen.
right?
It's
Yep.
like what is going on here? So now fast forward, we're in this place now. If I could, do you have a personal faith or a personal feeling about that, or do you share that, or is it not about that in general? Because once again, this is more of a what this is to also humanize us, right? Because we
Yeah.
are just like everyone else struggling to find who we are, our place in this place, what we're doing here, how it is. And I know a lot of people who lose faith or something, lose that other part, right? The purpose, the meaning, those other things. You
Yeah.
clearly filled it in with this activism. How have you seen the journey for some people that you've seen that struggle with that, and other tools to help them manage that purpose part as they transition away from a dogma or an
Yeah.
ideology such as religion?
Yeah, so I'm as of this recording, I'm 26, and I'm a young professional. I'm
Half my
starting
age, man.
to literally. Um, I've been struggling and trying to figure out things with my life too. A lot of typical things that one that goes through as an entrepreneur, growing up in America, trying to find his place. I've been through a lot. I have been through a lot. When, just over these last few years, seeing an entire social movement collapse in front of my face, seeing some of my heroes, their careers end and blow up right in front of my face, having to go through three massive life changes because of these different movements and communities going through splits, seeing people who I once considered to be friends go after me, whether it be um, uh, lefty, woke, what you could argue maybe woke leaning atheists who now don't like me anymore because I came out with my real views on the social justice stuff to even certain people on the right. I got involved in Republican politics actually very briefly, and I saw certain people just see me as a nice
It's
doormat for
weird. It
not doing
happens,
anything.
right? Let,
Yeah,
let, let's get it.
yeah.
Let's get into the MAGA cult real quick. Let's do it. Let's call that religion what it is.
Mhm.
The second Kyle Rittenhouse just makes a mention. He's basically he cares about 2A. He
Yep.
mentions that he's going to vote for Ron Paul, and cat turd comes out of absolutely nowhere. The guy with 2 million followers on Twitter and just attacks him. Joe
Yep.
Rogan says Robert F. Kennedy makes sense, and these people attack
And
him. Are you kidding me?
everybody attacked him. So look, I'm not going to make a stance on who I would prefer for president. I don't care if somebody
Right.
calls me
Not
Charlie
even that.
Kirk.
It's just
I'm doing that.
watching that kind of
It's
behavior is,
ridiculous. Yeah.
yeah,
It's absolutely ridiculous. I've started to disagree more and more with Matt Walsh from the Daily Wire, but he actually made a very good tweet that I really concurred with. I don't know if you saw it, where he was going after those who were going after I think Rittenhouse, and also going those who were going after Joe Rogan for simply having a view that he never said he was a right winger. By the way, he never said that he was voting for Trump.
first of all, he
And
says he's nothing but he's only voted Democrat. Just to be
yeah,
clear, I
so
listened to his
so
show, so
it's kind of funny when and I've seen this a lot over the past year to year and a half. I have seen, and because I've been active in the Young Republicans, I've been active in certain spaces. I'm not going to name particular names, but I've seen people who I once considered to be trusted friends, people who were there for me throughout the years, completely. They say throughout the years, oh no, no, on a college campus or something. Oh yes, we're the good guys. We're the ones who appreciate freedom of speech, and we're not like the woke left. Here we are. We really care about this diversity of ideas. We're the real classical liberals. To now, maybe that was said in 2018, 19, 20, 21, maybe even 22. But now in 2024, you have some of them completely going back against it and acting just like the woke left, religiously left apologist demagogues that we criticize. So it's kind of funny to see that. If anything, it
yeah.
makes me more proud to run a 501c3 because we have great members of our organization who are going to vote for former President Trump. We have great members of our organization who are going to vote for Kamala Harris. We have great members of our organization that are going to vote for Chase Oliver and RF Kennedy Jr. and others.
Mhm.
I don't care at this point. I care
Yeah.
if, and I made a tweet about this. I care if you want to see a civilization that's propped up on Enlightenment values and survive the next 100 years than you dying and scrambling on the next election that'll happen in 1 year. Because guess what's going to
Every
happen then?
4 years, the most important
Every four
elections
years, every
in my
one
lifetime.
year, this is the biggest election of our lifetimes, blah 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 blah. And I'll actually concede I do think that certain elections more in the modern day with our freedoms of speech being curtailed are more important than
For
past
sure.
elections. But
Right.
every election it's going to get more dire than others. I care about who you are as a person because I've seen Democrats betray me, I've seen Republicans betray me, I've seen so-called advocates of liberty betray me. By the way, I don't have a big list of people that have done this. It is very minuscule, but I have seen people grift and go, or get away from what they really stand for, and it's disgusting. And so I care about promoting Enlightenment values. I care about leading Atheists for Liberty, this org that I've been running for the last several years, into victory, us accomplishing our mission, and one day, maybe it takes 10 years, maybe it takes 50 years, maybe it takes 2 years, eventually closing up shop and saying mission accomplished because a nonprofit is not meant to last forever. And doing a good thing for the betterment of civilization. And if it means making more allies where I can and putting and being an adult and trying to agree and to disagree where we can, that's great. And if others want to continue to do that with me, that is fantastic too. We all don't have to agree on everything. I'll act like we're still in 2020 and we're all in agree to disagree for the benefit of free speech mode, if, for those that want to play that game with me. but I'm not going to cower away from our ideals just to appease people who will go back against what they really care about,
Right. And it makes
what they
so much
claim to
sense.
care
And you
about.
sit here and you watch these ideals. It's like they're getting stripped away. We're stripping them away ourselves. And it makes no sense why we would do this to ourselves. I mean, the way I've always looked at this, or I guess it's taken a very long time because I'm still deprogramming at 49, but I'm looking at this whole thing and it's like, why are we trading one set of tyranny for another? Like
Yeah,
Christopher Hitchens says it so succinctly. It's like, you're talking about you were born free because God made you free, but that doesn't make you free then because you're under
yeah.
that. Like,
You're under an
I
eternal
don't,
king, an eternal North
it's,
Korea.
yeah,
You're in an eternal North Korea,
right.
heaven.
And I try to understand that. I try to parse with that because that's the part where it really just becomes very evident is like we because we would want to impose our will on others is why no one should be allowed to impose anyone's will on anyone else.
Yeah,
Like how do we not how is that message not clear enough for people to just grasp? It's like, excuse me, if you had it your way, wouldn't you want to do it your way? Okay, well, if I had it my way, I'd want to do it my way. So considering that's the case, why should we force any of our ways on anyone? Hello, I
yeah.
mean, it's you know, so I'm kind of there,
This is
so
why I usually
so
find
faith
common
what
cause with people in the liberty movement, even though we have Atheists for Liberty in the
right
name. We're more of an atheist organization because of a cognitive liberty, but we're easily able to market in the liberty movement
right
because of this. Yeah,
it's the ultimate liberty. I mean, it's really the true. I mean, you want to talk free will, that would be the one about stepping away from any tyranny or any servitude or anything like that. Just being purposeful and being mindful to your compatriot, to your person, because of courtesy, because of humanity, because we have to do this because we're all in this together. I mean, that's kind of the point of how that's the way around that other part. You know what I mean? Is that we're all sharing this, so we got to get through it. But
yeah, exactly.
so, yeah. So you how large is your organization? How many I saw a pretty big list of people on your in your
Yeah.
like leadership
We
team
have
and everything.
300 to 350 members spanning across the country. We're growing day by day, state directors across the nation. We're trying to get to 50 state directors before the end of the year, and I think we can accomplish it. Programs offline and online. So we do different receptions throughout the country, community engagement events throughout the country. We do Discord events and game nights for members, X spaces with some of the leading figures in the culture wars. I host a show on Tuesday nights called Unbound Ideas. It's showcasing the greatest minds of the 21st century. That's primarily through YouTube, but we're also on X and Facebook. And we have two other YouTube shows as well. We have a show called Atheist Insights, which is Peter Clark interviewing a lot of rising stars in the world of atheism. Recorded podcast. We have a philosophy show called Airs of Fire. So John, who you met, aka Ruin of the Gods, he is getting involved and diving deep into a lot of different ideas and challenging a lot of people on a lot of things, which was creating, quite frankly, a lot of good content that people want to see. So we're doing so much at Atheists for Liberty. Let me see what else can. College tour coming up. Street epistemology on college campuses. We're trying to be involved with Professor Richard Dawkins, the most famous atheist in the world. He is on his final tour, about to embark on his final tour throughout the United States, Canada, and Europe. So we're trying to find ways to be involved there, growing our
And it's
online
it's
content and
interesting.
becoming,
He's an
yeah,
interesting one because I've watched the four horsemen kind of lose a little luster, each of them kind of falling a little bit. The only one that kind of survived, I think, in my opinion, was Dennett because he passed what a couple months ago, or
yeah,
I
back in
think in May
April.
or March or something. And I watched
Yeah.
there was a great conversation between he and Peterson right before he passed, about
Right
3 weeks
before,
before.
but and you saw the bandage on his head. You saw he was kind of
Yeah,
wounded, but he
yeah, it
still
was
cared
one.
about getting on, which
Right.
I
Yeah, it was
appreciated.
pretty amazing. And I found him to be the most rational because he never seemed to get out of his lane in an interesting way. I feel Harris completely got Trump derangement syndrome in addition to the Muslim stuff. I know Hitchens had his stuff too, but Hitchens was a very unique character. I mean, he's very
Yeah.
complicated. But Dennett was the one
I've
I
learned to
always saw. But
appreciate all of them
Doc,
for
yes, and I have. And
for
certainly once
even with
again,
their imperfections.
well, don't we look at the ideas? I mean, we can look at the brilliance that they are within those things that they are. We can compartmentalize because a person is not just a collection of their ideas. Sometimes they have a great idea and a horrible idea, just how it is, right? So
Yeah,
I
exactly.
watched this, but watching was it Dennett just be so rational and be so he just seems so pure in the way he spoke. He didn't seem to have the resentment or carry any kind of resentment like some of those. But Dawkins has that thing with Israel recently where he had that imperialistic thing. It's like, why can't these people figure out like what everything that's good? You know what I mean? It kind of like it
Yeah,
unfortunately taints it, you know?
especially when it comes to people you look up to, heroes, right? They have a view that's
Yeah,
not always
it's hard.
great. I have my own personal disagreements, probably with which horseman, two of the ones that are still alive and two of the ones that are fortunately no longer alive. But I learned to appreciate them for the contributions that they made to civilization, and that's what I love about
Absolutely.
AFL. I'm pulling Mr. HR manager, being apologetic, totally admit it. But that's what I like about Atheists for Liberty. The fact that we can have agree to disagree. The fact that we can,
Right.
be in this environment with people that have so many different views, but still appreciate them for the good things that they can contribute to, where we don't get off track and dismiss somebody just because of those disagreements. So I try really hard to like be that nonprofit president and like not let my personal views get in the way, because there are sometimes where I look at certain famous atheists from the past and some of the things they said, and and just get really upset. But that's that's what the woke atheists did. They saw something that Richard Dawkins said that they disagree with. They threw him under the bus. The American Humanist Association in 2021 took away his 1996 Humanist of the Year award and gave it to Anthony Fauci instead. Even though, to be fair, they gave one to
Whoa,
Fauci in
really?
2003 as well. Yeah, yeah,
Has
exactly.
anyone
But
written a story about this? Has
we
anybody like
did
at Reason or anybody?
yeah, so we if you go to atheistforliberty.org, you go to our statement section.
Yeah.
I wrote a statement that was played on a bunch of different podcasts about the matter, and I do talk about that. We talk about that as well on our YouTube channel. So you can search it up, especially a lot of my appearances from around 2021 going into 2022. You'll find me talking a lot about it. I met Richard Dawkins for the first time back in May, and I was so giddy. It was like meeting, even running Atheist Survey, it's like meeting one of your heroes. It was
Oh,
so
I mean, I
nice.
can't. Yeah. Yeah,
And it was
absolutely. I mean,
so
we
weird
saw
to try to
Steve
figure
Forbes. I
out.
mean, some of the people, Brett
Yeah,
Weinstein, Schellenberger at Freedom Fest was just like absolute
crazy.
starstruck, you know?
Yeah, and so with me, Dawkins was one of those, because he helped shape
Yeah.
my life in many ways. And I was like, I think I went up to him and I said, like, people told me to make an interesting comment to you about your socks to try to get into a combo with you, but I don't think that's going to work. So, hi, my name is Thomas, and we met at Dissonant Dialogues a few months ago. And one of the openers,
Yeah.
though, that had me continue the conversation was, it was so disturbing to see what happened to you in 2021 with these people betraying you, and everything that you accomplished and did for us in the United States, did for our civilization as a normal biologist who just wanted to communicate the truth. And he was about to debate Ion Hersey Ali. And I said, no matter what, we still stand by you. Don't deviate. Be the Richard Dawkins that we know you to be. I said that to him. I don't know if he remembers, but
Right.
but
I think that's the one where they actually that's where Russell got Dobler got him after about the thing with Israel. It might have been after
I
the
think so.
Hersey
Yeah, there was
Ali
some
one.
kind of
He must have been because he seemed a
incident.
bit rattled. He seemed a little off his he
Yeah,
would
to be,
he might
I
have
think he
not
took
been a
on his
little under the
other.
weather or something. I don't know, but it seemed
Yeah,
it was an interesting.
he's in his 80s. He's been doing this
Yeah,
for years.
yeah,
There's a
definitely.
reason
I mean,
why, yeah, this tour is going to be the final one. I don't blame the man. I
absolutely.
think he's accomplished so
Yeah. I mean,
much.
the selfish gene is just an absolute, I mean, come on, meme,
Masterpiece.
literally
Yeah,
meme. I mean, we
he
have,
created memes.
you know,
Yeah,
it's like Monty Python invented spam and he invented meme. I mean, I mean,
exactly.
what kind of weird world are we living in? You know, it definitely makes you think it's a simulation, right?
Big time.
So you have these interesting liberty things and it is beautiful. So you met Dawkins and have you met
I did.
Harris yet then?
I've not met Harris. He of the three that were alive before April of 2024, I only met Richard Dawkins and Daniel Dennett. So Dennett was the first horseman that I actually ever met. I was just out of high school, my freshman year of college. It was a FFRF, Freedom from Religion Foundation convention in 2016. This was in Pittsburgh, um, and uh, and I met him. And oh my God, I had my friend embarrassed himself in front of him because I gave my friend wrong information. I thought Dennett taught at Harvard, and so I'm like, yeah, that's a great in. And he's like, I didn't teach at Harvard. I'm like, oh, but I don't think he
Oh,
remembered. I don't think he remembered. I don't think he remembered. But it was
I've
it
got
was a cringy
mouth
moment that I
disease. It's
still
okay.
remember.
You know
Uh,
what it is though,
yeah,
Thomas, when you network, believe me, how many times did you stick your foot in your mouth, misspeak,
oh
like
my God,
even
so
just at
many
Freedom Fest,
times.
you're just like, you're John Thompson. I'm like, I'm
Right.
Jim Jordanson. What are you talking about? I have no, and you're
Oh,
like,
I was
ah,
starstruck.
you
I
know,
was starstruck this year. I was at Freedom Fest. I was staying in the Link Hotel, which was one of the two hotels that were linked to the
yeah,
Caesars Convention Center, at least that we were staying at Caesars Forum. And I remember passing by the hotel check-in because I needed to get something from my room, and the guy who wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad was just
Yes.
hanging out.
Kiyosaki, right?
Kiyosaki was just hanging out,
Robert
and I
Kiyosaki.
was like
Yeah.
passing by,
Yeah.
and I was like, I was trying not to look too much at him, like that's him, right? And then he came by the Atheists for Liberty booth, and he was like just touring the convention. I'm like, I'm a big fan of your books. I love everything you do because I binge like business. I'm a early Zoomer. I binge business and capitalist and entrepreneur TikTok just for fun. I always love like grind set TikTok,
Right.
and so there's a lot of clips of him, and so I just binge them, and it was so crazy to still meet him, even to this day. After doing
Oh
politics
yeah.
and meeting heroes, like you would think that you would kind of just be used to it, and in some ways, I guess I am. But when you meet somebody new, that starstruck feeling, like I'm in high school, it came right back,
Yeah.
and I
Well, the
was
one that got me was Massey. It was morning in Massey, and I was videotaping the front, and it was early. I mean, it's very early. People were still filing in or whatever. Something popped in my head to head to the back, just step to the back, and I just almost walked right into him. And
yeah,
I'm like, Rep
and it's
Massey,
so
it's
random,
like,
right? You do
and it's the most amazing
you
story. And like,
you take
I
one
have to
breath of the
share because
water.
it's right. And
Please.
it's just the humanity that it is, though, right? I walk up to him like, first thing, obvious, I'm so sorry for the loss of your wife. It's the first, it just happened, right? It was just first thing.
I heard.
And he looked at me and he goes, I cried all night tonight so I wouldn't have to today. And it's like, that's what it's all about. I mean, you know what I mean? His desire for to spread the liberty message, he put himself through that. I mean, he put himself through that agony. It was so recent, and I can't imagine what that's like. So
No.
I admire people who are able to have that kind of fortitude. So I just much respect to people who get through that stuff.
Yeah. It's something that I've had to deal with a little bit on a minor level, but I'm unfortunately going to have to deal with it on more major levels as I get older. I don't think I'm going to change my views. I don't think I'm going to change my values or anything like that. Um, just saying, future people, you know, uh, but
I don't think your values are bad. I think you know what I mean.
no, but like
Views might change, but I
that
don't think the
whole
values
idea of
are.
crisis of meaning and all that. A lot of people they have these thoughts, when they lose loved ones or lose family members or lose spouses. I saw it happen to my grandfather. Um,
Yeah, because you
you
become a
know,
caretaker, so there's your meaning for a while, and
yeah,
then that meaning goes away, right?
you see somebody who you thought had it together because you looked up to them so much, instantly just fade into an abyss in terms of not knowing what to do with life. It scares you a little bit. It scares you a little bit because you're like, oh my God, this could happen to me. Maybe this,
It's a mirror.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a mirror for what is unfortunately to come. The way you deal with it might be a little different, but the same struggle, the struggle will be the same
Right.
as you're a human being.
And even to
So
make
yeah,
that full circle, we talk about religion and everything like that, and we talk about family.
yeah,
Well, if we look at the evolution, is the parents would raise the children would grow up,
right,
the parents would get older, parents can no longer care for themselves, the children would then help care for the parents at the end. This
yeah,
is the circle. This is the circle. It's kind of how it is. That has nothing to do with any faith in anything else other than faith in yourself and your fellow
exactly.
human. So,
Exactly,
you
and
know,
that's what makes me connect to people, regardless of culture wars and who's this religion or that religion.
yeah,
Especially when I've gotten older, it's made me care a lot more about my family and the great things my family's done for me. It makes you a little more humble. Um, uh, so this is why I tell people, I've already kind of been there. I've already been feeling these things, and I'm still so early in the game. It feels like I've been through three lifetimes of activism with movements crumbling and building back up, but
well, it sounds
I
like you've
still
done it
know that
about
I'm
10
young.
years now at a young age. I mean, that's a third of your
Yeah,
life already.
yeah,
I mean, that's a pretty impressive number. I'm still trying to find myself at, like I said, at my age. So if I may ask a couple questions, we had some social justice. You
yeah,
mentioned some social justice issues and infiltration. How did
yeah,
COVID play out with authoritarianism, masking, the
yeah.
vaccines? How did that religion or that cult kind of thing play into the atheism, and how did that infiltrate or
Big
did it?
time.
How did that
Uh,
affect your
Yeah, yeah,
organization?
especially when we were in our startup phase, there'd be some photos that we would put out on our social media back in the day in like 2020, 2021, of like us going to an event and us taking a photo, like me and my board chairman at the time, or me and at a conference, a free speech conference with a few other atheists that were on our advisory board or whatever, all smiling, all having our masks off, whatever. Even at events that required us to have masks, we take it off for 2 seconds, and we would comply with the mask rules at the time, or else some of these events couldn't even go on.
Right.
We take it
Right.
off for 2 seconds,
We
take a
knew what
photo.
had to be done. Right.
Everybody knew that the masks were like underneath us, right? And that we were taking it for just 2 seconds, anyways. And we got attacked by the woke crowd that took over the old movement on Twitter, on Facebook, and all these spaces saying, "Oh, look at how bad you guys are." When half of them did the same thing, anyways. But of course, we have the wrong views, so we have to be called out for it. So Matt Dillahunty
Right.
went after us a lot. A bunch of these social justice, I hate to say it, atheists
Right. Yeah. I mean,
took off
they're not.
after
Well, they're
us
not with your movement.
back in the day.
They're not liberty
Yeah.
atheists. They might be
No,
atheists, but they're
they
not
don't care
liberty
about
atheists.
liberty.
Apparently.
No, they're not the atheists like in my view that they were back in the day when they started.
Right.
Nonpartisan, or at least caring about the mission. They prioritized a new religion over that original mission. And we got attacked in some other ways. We did make one, I guess you could say, religion-friendly comment, and one view that we have. It's that we were not a fan of the government forcing churches to do certain things when COVID was going on, forcing to shut down, forcing to do certain, to shut down some of their essential services or whatever. I'm a firebrand atheist. I fit technically that anti-theist definition. I actually don't use it because people think that I hate religious people. So I say I'm a firebrand atheist. Some people say militant atheist. I say firebrand atheist. But it really means
I've been
two
able
things.
to
I'm not,
articulate my anti-theism, so I'll
yeah.
share it. But I want to hear the rest of yours in a
So
second.
I'm not a fan of religion whatsoever. I love religious
Right.
people, and I love the First Amendment, and I care about religious liberty deeply. So even as that passionate atheist that I am, I made a stance, and we made some stances on our social media saying that we think churches should remain open even during COVID because of separation between church and state.
Right.
The go-
But it's
so
also
so
authoritarian in general because
yeah,
your stance is liberty. You're atheists
right,
for liberty. You
yeah,
it just happens to be you're an atheist,
free
but you're
speech, free
actually fighting
expression,
for the liberty part. I
yeah,
mean, it's like
exactly.
it's really the
We're not,
atheist actually isn't really the labeling part. It's the
precisely.
liberty part, really. It's the
We're not
labeler.
abandoning our atheism and our passion for atheism, and we're not caring too much about just the
Right.
liberty stuff, and we're not caring too much about the atheism stuff where we abandon our
Well,
values,
you're not
our pillars
pushing
of
your
life, liberty,
atheism
liberty.
on others. You're not forcing
No,
others to not believe. You're saying I am free to not believe. That
yeah,
is what you're saying,
we'll give our
you know.
stances and we'll joke about religion. We'll be passionate about it. We'll state our views, but we care about the First Amendment. We are Americans at the end of the day.
Beautiful. And you
We
even
care
have
about
the
the First
flag hanging
Amendment.
correct. The blue is top left corner. So thank you.
Yes, of
It's
course.
one of those one things like if you're going to do it right.
Do it the right way. Exactly.
If you're going to do it.
Yep.
I'm not saying to do it or not do it. I don't advocate anything. I'm just saying if you're going to do it one way, do it the right way, right?
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. So the anti-theism. So this is how I explain, and maybe you can help me hone it even better. But it's like anti-theism is this. Theism is the human interpretation of whatever God is.
Right.
I may not know what that the interpretation of God is. I just know that humans do not have it right. That's the only thing I know. And
Yeah.
it's the theism part is actually the human creation of the God entity and how it interplays. And that's what I actually combat. Not
Yeah.
whether the entity exists or what the entity or what it,
Mhm.
even if there is one or not, it has nothing to do with that. It is just
Right.
the interpretation and someone's kind of rule over me using that interpretation, which I don't know what it is
Mhm.
as I'm working it out in myself and everyone else is, and I'm sure you are too. We've all had personal experiences,
Yeah.
but I just know that that's not correct. And that's
Yeah.
what I combat against.
I mainly combat that too. So, as the leader of Atheists for Liberty, as the founder and president, I, of course, will have that conversation. I'm no longer of the view, I had this view in like 2020. Let's put the God conversation aside and then only talk about this, this, and this. Well, a few years have passed since COVID. A few years have passed since our inception. A few years have passed since we started talking about woke this, woke that, blah, blah, blah. So no, I'm open to having those conversations. I think it's important to have those conversations, but simultaneously, I still care about the Big Ten. So if we have secularists in the liberty movement, for instance, just an example, who care about us being in the liberty movement, us caring about church state separation, us caring about religious liberty, us caring about atheists and even other religious minorities being treated with dignity and equality of opportunity and the liberty that they deserve to have a voice within the liberty movement, I am going to make interfaith alliances when I can. as long as I'm not dishonest with myself or how I communicate to people. So I've become friends recently with the head of the Hindu American Foundation. We obviously have big disagreements probably when it comes to Hinduism and belief in the supernatural. I'm not going to hide that. But just like any coalition that you're in, you have allies. Allies are not meant to be lockstep in your army, right?
Right.
But there's enough agreement, and maybe over 50% agreement, where these people are more on your side than against your side. That's what allies are. They're not meant to
Right.
fully be in lockstep with you. And as a leader of any organization or any movement, you have to learn who those allies are and to be able to be mature enough to have that tent, to have that coalition built up for you to care about some important fights you might be involved in. And that's why we're always welcome at Freedom Fest every single year, because we recognize when we can share our agreements more than our disagreements.
Yeah. Well, Valerie, Mark, they're great. Valerie
They're
Durham
fantastic.
and yeah,
Valerie and
Mark
we
Stalzin,
get along
Haley, they're
all
just
the
phenomenal.
time. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
it's
freaking
it's just
awesome.
amazing watching that. So, well, that's really great. Well, it was just a pleasant conversation, Thomas. I know you probably need to go in a little bit here, but
Yeah.
if you have any other topic you'd like to talk about, I'm like I said, I'm all ears. So,
So, Mark, and we'll definitely chat a little bit. I'd love to chat with you for a few minutes after the program because I'll just tell people I want to chat with you about maybe getting involved with us and what we do. Whenever I hear people like yourself have these conversations with me, either if it's on the air like this or like in a casual format, like if you visit our booth and we got to talking a little bit more, I tell people, okay, I have to snag you. I have to get you in the fight. And the reason why, I'm not just being a good nonprofit president and saying this, we do have a fight ahead of us. So we have, it's great to talk about what we're for. We are for liberty. But what's great about atheist organizations, yes, atheist groups in many ways focus on what they are against. A lot of people find that to be a negative, and you don't have this philosophy or that philosophy to show you, to build
but
you
you're
up and
for
blah blah blah.
liberty.
You're for liberty. We're
Like
for liberty.
it's
We
like
we we
you
check
got to
that
look
off.
at that back part. You got to look at the
We
back
are
part.
for liberty. That's great, and that's where we're able to solve that question. But sometimes people also think that like being against something is super duper negative in and of itself. No, sometimes being against bad ideas is a positive. Sometimes you need people that are willing to throw punches. We are in a culture war, and we need people to help fight this war. We need activists. We need people that are educators. We want people to be a part of our community because it helps strengthen our branding and our ability to fight for enlightenment values. So for people that are interested in getting involved in our Discord server and wanting to see the events we have privately for members and our game nights and stuff like that, really showing that we can provide you with somewhat of a sense of community and purpose, not in person, I highly encourage you to join and become a member. I highly encourage you to join and become a member, guys, if you're interested in being involved in with Atheists for Liberty in a major city or town near you. We're rebuilding the local atheist meetup apparatus with our state directors. I highly encourage you to volunteer at Atheist Liberty. We have a volunteer Google page where we're looking for people to join our various volunteer committees, from those that can help us put out social media posts to graphic creation to people that have a knowledge of certain state laws to policies to people that want to help volunteer with us at conferences or AFL events or help run the cameras for our college tour, you name it, donors, everything. Atheistsforliberty.org, guys. AtheistsForliberty.org. You can also follow me at Sheedy Tom. That's SheedyThom, and follow Atheists for Liberty on a multitude of platforms. Just search up Atheists for Liberty or Atheist Liberty on most platforms. You'll find us. Give us a follow because we go on so many podcasts, but we also do interactive X spaces that we allow people to come on in and be speakers in. We do so much. And I'm already going on a marketing rant that I shouldn't even go on. Just join the movement. If you really understand that there are authoritarians at the gate, whether they be Christian nationalists, not in the CNN way that people describe Christian nationalists, real Christian nationalists,
Right.
Islamists,
Like legit. Right.
or people in various forms of orthodoxy that want to tear apart the separation between church and state, the woke religion in and of itself, who wants that think that America is some evil imperialist experiment that needs to be taken down based on this new intersectional religious way of thinking. These are all enemies of liberty. These are all enemies of your own autonomy. And yes, I know some people say, well, I'm very individualistic. I can't join a collective in any way. I get it. But if you want liberty, you need to fight for a group. For once that fight is done, then you should be left alone. Then you can break away from the group and be left alone. I want you to be left alone. I want to be left alone too. I'm 26. I'm finding out. I'm trying to figure out as many ways to be left alone and have a prosperous, good economic life as much as I can. Believe me, guys. But we have to fight in order to have that. And we need each and every one of you to join us in that fight Mark, yourself included. So I want to say, Mark, end of tangent. I told you I go on tangents too. Thank you so much for having me on, man, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you more with in the future. Means a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. You're officially part of the Not Conscious family. I'm sure we're going to definitely talk offline as soon as I hit end here, but
Definitely.
I will put all your links and everything up on like, in the show notes and everything like that. So thank
Fantastic.
you again for joining us. Thomas Sheedy, president and founder of Atheists for Liberty. Just
Yes.
remember the for Liberty part. That's what we need to worry about.
That's what we are
Again,
for. That's what we are all about.
thank you. Exactly. So thank you again. Welcome to the Not Conscious family. Have yourself a great Monday evening, and we will talk in a second offline, sir.
Thanks for having me, man.
Take care. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. I hate to leave you, but I really must say, good night, sweetheart. Good